Welcome back to the Joust About Careers podcast. I'm your host, Brian Bratt, and this week's guest is 2000 Van Buren graduate, Dr. J. Michael Weiss-Holmes, who is a professor of saxophone and music performer. In this episode, Michael shares how he developed the skills necessary to become both a performer and professor, why performers typically travel with their own instruments, how he doesn't fall into the starving artist category, and much more. Whether you are interested in a career as a musician or professor, or are still exploring your options, I hope that what Michael shares today will help all of you make better career decisions and have fulfilling career journeys. Enjoy the show. Michael, thank you very much for joining us today. And I'd like to start by just asking, how does a typical day look for you as a professor of saxophone?
Well, every day is a little different for me, and I always sort of lovingly tell my students that right now I'm currently sitting here with you. Last hour I was teaching an individual private lesson. Right before this, in about 45 minutes, I'll be conducting all of my students in a mass saxophone ensemble. We have about 16 students in the ensemble. And then the next hour after that, I'll be coaching a saxophone quartet, and then I have committee meetings, rehearsals. So every day is a little different. Every hour is a little different. And for me, that's kind of what I love about the arts, is that it's constantly evolving. As an educator, it's evolving. As a performer, it's evolving. So every hour is slightly different than the one before, which I think is fun. So
variety is always good. There's no doubt about that. Now, obviously, you're teaching people in your position, but you also do a lot of performing on your own. You've been at Carnegie Hall. You've been the principal saxophonist for a large variety of orchestras across the country. You've been on stage with artists like Ben Folds and The Temptations. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
I guess, how does it make you feel when you look back at all of that? And I guess, what role does performance play in your career as well as your teaching?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always knew, even from all of my time all the way back at Van Buren. I mean, I was a student there all the way through the 80s and the 90s. I graduated with, at the time, the largest class to ever go through Van Buren. We had about 80 in my graduating class. And I think I always knew, even back then, if anyone knew who I was when I was still in school, I did every possible musical activity that I possibly could. And so being a performer has been ingrained in me since I picked up the saxophone when I was in fourth grade. And I've never stopped loving it. I've never stopped wanting to share the stage with people and learn from them. I've been very, very fortunate and grateful to get to do some of the things that you've spoken about. And I mean, I have a lot of core memories of being on stage with some incredible people that, you know, young Michael in middle school and high school would have never even dreamed was possible. Sitting on stage with Chicago Symphony and then sharing the stage with them at Carnegie Hall, and would have never even been on my radar. But I think I always believed in the beauty and the power of music. I think I always believed in my own abilities and my work ethic within music. It takes a lot of work. And I think that performing for me is as important as what my teaching is. I think they both share a lot of synergies. I learn as much from playing as I do from teaching, and I'm a better educator because I play at a very high level. Because I understand I'm the master, and I'm the person who is the master, and I have apprentices, which is for my students. And so for me, if I can't walk that walk, then I should not be able to talk that talk in the music aspect as well. So for me, it's a matter of knowing what my ability levels are, so that I can and continuing to work on that craft, so that I can then instill those values in my students, teach my students how to do that. And then on the other side of your question, there's also the kind of the selfish nature of being a musician. I love to get up on stage and have people tell me that I did a good job when I get off stage. I mean, it's kind of that simple, right? I mean, it's why we do what we do. It's you know, we want people to enjoy the art form. We want people to say, "Hey, nice job," when you're done. And so that feels really good as well. So I think you know, teaching and performing for me are a big part of my career. And I just can't imagine doing either one of them without each other in some way. So.
Now, you obviously have your piano sitting there as well. How
Yeah.
many different instruments do you play?
I back in the day, I used to play quite a few. I took piano lessons for about 10 years. I sang for many, many years and took voice lessons. I've studied clarinet and flute along the way. But at this point, I'm a specialist. What I do is I play in my doctorate is in saxophone. My master's and undergrad are both in saxophone. And so I really do specialize in playing the saxophone and teaching the saxophone at this point. So I dabble a little on this bad boy back here. This is mostly for it's for show right now, but no, it's actually more so for my when my students have their pianist come over with them and we can work on in that way. I don't play as much as I used to at this point, but it's
Okay.
here for more so for my students to utilize.
Okay. Now, when you graduated from Van Buren, went on to Bowling Green,
Yeah.
did you think that you would eventually earn your doctorate in saxophone, or what were your plans when you graduated from Van Buren?
Yeah, no. I no. I don't think I thought I was smart enough to have a doctorate. I don't think I knew at the time that that was even a possibility in some ways. But for me, I when I left Van Buren and ultimately went to Bowling Green, I wanted to become a band director. I wanted to follow in the footsteps of people that I emulated. I wanted to teach at the high school level, hopefully, and kind of do that for a career. And I ended up at the end of my time at Bowling Green, I was playing at a high level. I had just done a bunch of recitals and things. I was like, well, I'll audition for graduate school. We'll kind of see how that goes, because in the arts you have to audition to be accepted in. And so yes, there's the merit of the academics, but there's also the audition component of it. And so I auditioned at 5 graduate programs, very prestigious programs. I got into all 5 and I got full rides at all 5. And so I decided at that point it probably would behoove me to go ahead and take an opportunity. And so I took the opportunity and went to the University of Illinois to do my master's degree. I moved, about 7 hours away from home, against the angst of my mother. And that was kind of the start of the next track for me. And then I stuck it through not only for the master's degree, but also into my DMA, my doctorate of musical arts. And it took a little time. I won't lie about that. I finished coursework in 2007, and the dissertation took me a little time to do. Writing a 300-page document was not something that I enjoyed, but I'm really proud of it. And it took a while, but so from start to finish, from the time I ended my time at Van Buren to when I graduated with my doctorate was 12 years, and I took my time and got it done. And now I've had a doctorate for about 13, 14 years of my life now at this point. So,
Right, right. Now, you talked about the University of Illinois. While you were there studying, you also worked, or at some point did some work as music admissions enrollment management director.
yeah.
So let's say a student does want to get it, advance beyond a bachelor's degree in music, etc. You've talked a little bit about the performance aspect in addition to the classwork. I guess, is there any advice you would give to someone who is maybe wanting to go to that point in a music career?
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate. I think early in my career, I kind of got to taste different aspects of this industry, the music industry, in kind of different ways. Yeah, I worked my first collegiate teaching job, actually my second technically collegiate teaching job, was at the University of Illinois, back where I had done my master's and doctorate. And I had a dual appointment as a teaching faculty member and also as an administrative position. And I'm actually really grateful to have that experience, because I feel like it has armed me with more information about what students and parents are going through in the process of applications and auditioning. In my area, of course, in the arts, there is kind of a separate, like I said earlier, there's an audition component to it, but also just kind of understanding how to traverse financial aid and all of these different things. You know, I think that experience helped me sort of understand longer term what was available for students. I think, with the arts get this sort of rap of, you're never going to make any money. You're not going to find a job. yada yada yada. I heard all of this stuff all from
Right.
all the way back at when I was at Van Buren. I've made an incredible living. I make very good money. I have traveled the world because of the arts. I have met people. I've been to every continent basically on the face of the earth. I've been to almost every country I'd ever thought or even knew about at the time. And I've been able to teach students in all of those, and it's because of music, because it's just sort of universal language. And so for me, um, I love being armed with all of that information because it helps me help my future students and their parents understand what things are actually accessible. Not everyone who goes into music is going to become a teacher or a performer. There's sound and lighting and design and stage management and people who fix instruments, people who sell the instruments, people who actually manufacture the instruments. There's hundreds of thousands of different positions within the arts that don't involve just teaching and performing. And so I think for me, finding that out kind of firsthand only benefited myself to have more of an awareness what will be possible for anyone who wants to go into these kind of careers, basically.
Right. Well, and that's a perfect segue into my next question, because I was going to ask about you working at Van Buren and Con Selmer. I'm not sure if I'm
Yeah,
butchering those names.
you are, but
Um,
that's okay.
what are the official the actual names?
So Van Doren they're both Parisian based companies. So Van Doren is a reed and mouthpiece manufacturer,
Okay.
the kind of top reed and mouthpiece manufacturer in the world. And so I was able to work with them, and then Con Selmer. Selmer is another Parisian based company that they manufacture the actual instruments. So this is a Selmer saxophone right here, which is
Okay.
kind of like the Rolls Royce of saxophones, basically, kind of the top tier of what you can get in the saxophone world. So,
Okay.
but yes, I did. What was your question? I'm sorry.
Well, and so, while you work for them, you help develop that emerging artist competition, the Woodwind Studio at Elkhart, uh,
Yeah.
for artists and industry influencers. I guess, again, I feel like you have created such a well-rounded experience for yourself that, like you said, you can help almost everyone um, to find those niches that might fit them really well. Did you ever consider staying in, sales and with companies like that, or was it always the performance and teaching?
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone with a right mind, when you have a super solid salary and benefits and all of the things, of course you're going to look at that and go, why would I ever want to leave this? Um, but for me, the itch of teaching and performing has always been there. So when I was working at places like Selmer and Van Doren, and you mentioned a couple of things that I did, so I sort of, with a couple of colleagues, kind of came up with this idea of like a young artist competition. But in my mind, that's the way of using the kind of business sector of the music industry to say, okay, there still is educational value within inside of that. So how can we still educate while still understanding that we're a corporation and we're trying to make money, but we're there for the students, we're there for the professionals. And so the idea was to sort of come up with ways that the business side could continue to help these young artists sort of succeed within the career. Same thing with the artist studio in Elkhart, was a way to tie in the educational value of what the music industry brings within the sector of business. And so I think it was always my way of kind of marrying education within, I mean, anything that I was doing at the time. And as someone who went to school for a lot of years, I love learning. And so for me, learning the business side of things, learning the academic and business and all of the other sides of music has only helped my own understanding, and to that point again, my students' understanding of everything. So,
Right.
but for me, it's always been about teaching and performing. It's always been there for me.
Right. Now, you were also served in leadership positions with the North American Saxophone Alliance. Are there organizations like that for all instruments?
Yeah.
Or, and I guess, is that something that a high school student could and should get involved in if they're interested in working with a specific instrument?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So just as, in the music education world and in the state of Ohio, of course, where you are, there's something called OMEA, the Ohio Music Education Association. And I'm sure whomever the current band director and choir teachers are, I'm sure they're very, very heavily involved with those sort of things. I know that my band directors and choir teacher were involved when I was a student at Van Buren. And the North American Saxophone Alliance, the really bad acronym NASA, not the same thing. We are not Space Camp, but there is the Saxophone Alliance, and I got involved when I was in high school. Actually, was my first sort of indication with it, and since then have served as the secretary, and I was the marketing officer for the organization. I still am on kind of a leadership role within that. I'm involved with the scholarly publications that we do, called the Saxophone Symposium, which is an international publication. So I'm a peer reviewer for that. And so, for me, it's I think it's really important actually for young students to get involved with these kind of organizations. So if you're a flute player, there's something called the North NAFME or no NFA, National Flute Association, and for trumpets there's their own, and trumpet. So every instrument category has their own kind of specialty way to geek out with other people to play that same instrument. Basically, the saxophone is just the coolest one. So that's.
Well, that's cool. Yeah. I mean, again, I think a lot of times kids feel like, well, I want to get into this career, but there's nothing I can do to set myself up for that now. And I think, like you said, getting involved in these organizations could be very, very useful down the road.
Absolutely.
As you think about traveling for your career, when I travel, I put everything in my suitcase and I go. Do you take your own saxophone when you're traveling overseas to perform? Do you pick one up over there? I guess how individualized is a saxophone that you have to take yours or use someone else's, or how that all works?
Yeah, in a very rare occasion, I would borrow a saxophone or rent or utilize a saxophone from somewhere else. I always travel with my own. Okay. So this thing is always strapped on my back. There's a case that it goes in, and there are times when I love taking trips that I don't have to have a saxophone strapped to my back. However, I've been very fortunate to get to travel a lot of the world because of this. So I'm always grateful when it's there with me. It's kind of a comfort thing with me. But no, I always take my own instruments with me when I travel. There are some logistics with it. Sometimes with airlines, you do have to deal with some different things depending on how large the instrument is. If I'm traveling with this is an alto saxophone. If I'm traveling with like a baritone saxophone, you have to buy a seat for it, and it's like a whole process of going about that. This fits in an overhead bin, so it just acts as one of my carry-ons, and so just kind of depends how I'm doing it. But I never check instruments and throw them underneath. Unfortunately, most airlines don't know how to handle them. Right. I won't bore you with the cost of this, but needless to say, it's not inexpensive.
Right.
Some of the other instrument category, like piano, you're never going to travel with a piano. They're going to have them there for you. Yeah. But most of us travel with our instruments at the highest level. Most of us travel with our own instruments because they're very customized. I have a lot of bells and whistles on that bad boy that don't allow me to really just pick another one up and feel as comfortable as I do on my own. So
yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. Now, when you look at the best and most challenging parts of your career, both as a teacher and performer, I guess what are some of the really good, and what are some of those things that you deal with because you love your career?
Well, I mean, I'll deal with that part quickly, which is that, like any other career, there's always ups and downs of bureaucracy you have to deal with, especially at the collegiate level. I've been doing this since my 19th year of teaching at the collegiate level, and sometimes just dealing with the upper administration on certain things when they don't understand what you're doing. However, also having understood and having been on the administrative side, I'm never one to just pass blame to say, oh, that's not my problem. That's the administrators. That's not true. We're all working towards the same end goal. But there are inherent issues with, budgets and just like everything else. I mean, there's just a lot that goes into, and the art form of music is the most expensive sort of thing to teach at the collegiate level as well, because you have to have people like me. You have to have specialists on every single one of our instruments. I only teach saxophone here. So there's another person that only teaches clarinet, and another person that only teaches flute. So that part can get kind of hard. And then you have to deal with struggles of your own students. Coming out of COVID was not an easy time. Having gone through COVID and teaching online, which with an art form that should never be taught in that way, we had to kind of figure those things out. Dealing with the sort of cognitive, uh, just sort of learning of what happened after COVID was an interesting time. But I don't know, it's kind of par for the course in so many of the fields now. There's just always something you have to deal with.
Right.
For me, the other side is the kind of joy factor, which is the selfish nature, of course, loving what I do. And I love to get on stage and do that. There's the other side of it, which is that my goal is to give my students every tool necessary to fill their toolbox with to be successful in this industry. I love that challenge. I love turning students out and getting them jobs. I have a really good track record of that. I take that very, very seriously. There's, the moments when you get to share the stage with people who are your heroes, and you get to sit on stage with people that you never thought you would have had an opportunity to meet. Some of the travels I've gotten to do sitting in, the middle of the Hong Kong harbor and playing in front of 20,000 people. And one of the people that happened to be in the audience was someone that was an exchange student that I met when I was in high school at Van Buren High School. And she's from Hong Kong and came to the concert, and I would have never seen her again if it weren't for being there to do a performance. And so there's just tons of really great, I could bore you with thousands and thousands of stories of some of the cool things I've gotten to do because of this. But yeah.
Good. Yeah, that's awesome. Now, did she see that you were going to be there and that's why she went, or?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought maybe it's just a chance thing that.
Yeah, no, she reached out because I put something on. That's the joy, the one of the perks of social media, I guess. But sometimes it's nice to be able to sort of get the word out there. And she found out I was going to be coming, and we went to dinner and had a really wonderful time. And so anytime I go to Hong Kong, I always get together with Cheaping and we have a nice time. And but I met her because she was an exchange student at Van Buren, of all places, way back when. So
right, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about your students. Have you had any students who have gone on to great success in the music world? Or
yeah, I mean, I music is a interesting thing, because when you spend a lot of time in solitary confinement, and by that I mean a practice room by yourself, you learn how to become a master and a craftsman, and you learn how to be very organized with your time, and you have to be okay with being alone while you're working on something over and over and over and over again. So some of my students have, of course, gone on and become very successful. I have multiple students that are now professors of saxophone, or professors of music education, conductors. I have other students that have gone, I had 7 students graduate last year, and 5 of them got jobs straight out, and 2 of them went on into full rides into their master's programs at really prestigious institutions. So I see that as a sign of success as well. Right. I have other students that have gone in kind of different ways. They become doctors and lawyers and, advocates for the arts, or whatever kind of things that they believe in, because they're just dedicated at crafts. And so my students have gone on into so many different things. But yes, many of my students, most of what the end result of what I do, I would say 90% of my students go on and become either band directors or choir teachers or orchestra directors or private lesson teachers or collegiate level teachers. That's what most of my students go on to do, or performers. So I have students that are on Broadway. I have students that have gone on to do cruise ships and all that kind of stuff too. So yeah, all kinds of different industry verticals within. So
right. Well, yeah, I didn't even think about cruise ships, and
yeah.
just giving lessons, and again, all great opportunities to have a career in music, and I think that is awesome. So as we wrap up, looking back at all you've learned over the last however many years since you graduated from Van Buren, what do you know now about careers that you wish you had known when you were in high school?
For me, having grown up in very small town, having grown up in Findlay, and going to a very small school, I don't know what the size of the school is now, but it's probably still it's been a few years.
Similar.
It's been a few years since I've been there. The last time I was at Van Buren, I think I did the opening of the new auditorium. I got asked to come back when the new performing arts venue was opening up, and so I actually played the first concert there. But that would have been in like 2004, I think. It was like 2003 or 4. It was
03, 04.
Long time ago. But I don't think that the kid I was when I was in high school ever thought about sort of like going out into the world and seeing some of the things that I've seen and living in the place. I mean, I live in Florida now, of all places. I spent a large portion of my life living in downtown Chicago. I've lived in California. I lived in Indiana for a while. Like, I've kind of lived all over the place. And I don't think I knew that was something that was going to be possible at the time. I think I only thought of like Van Buren, this is where home is, this is what I'm going to do. But I've always liked a challenge, and I've always liked learning from other people and kind of experiencing new things, which is why I love to travel so much. So I don't know if I know how to answer the question other than I think the way I've sort of thought of my own career is that I know who I am. I know what I'm good at. I know what I like to do and how I like to spend my time. And if those three things are met, along with location, if it's a cool location and a great opportunity, I love to kind of blindly and optimistically jump feet first into things, because I don't feel like you can ever really experience life unless you actually experience it. And so for me, that kind of idea of knowing who I am, knowing what I'm good at, and then jumping feet first into different projects, jumping feet first into different locations, jumping feet first into whatever it may be, has been something that I've had to learn over the years, because I don't think I knew how to do that when I was young. I think that's been a learned trait that's taken me some time to sort of trust myself enough to know where I can go and what I can do. And, right now I'm living and teaching in Florida, and this will probably be where I'll be until I retire. And then the next adventure will happen. I mean, there's only a matter of time until the next adventure. So, yeah.
Well, very cool. Really interesting career. Really great to have such an accomplished musician as a graduate of Van Buren High School. So thank you very, very much for sharing about your career journey. Hopefully some students, if they're interested, they'll maybe reach out to you on LinkedIn to ask some more questions. And I really appreciate it, and good luck as you continue your career journey.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
If you liked this Joust About Careers episode, you can explore previous episodes and highlights to learn about even more careers of Van Buren graduates. To be sure you don't miss upcoming episodes, please click subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform so you'll know when the next episode is released. Thank you for spending a portion of your day with us, and we hope you will continue to prepare for your future by learning just about careers.